hits him with a kiss. Don't blink or you might miss another body on my list. She hits him with that deadly silence, dropping bodies like the virus. You might think that she's psychotic or maybe
LPC, back for another episode of Self-Aware and Effed Up. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about something a little bit different. It's something that's really close to my heart, but not something a lot of people are comfortable talking about, and that is suicide. For some of you guys, you may know that I work for a suicide prevention hotline. I've been working with this particular organization since 2017, so a little bit over 3 years at this particular point. And for about a year of my time with this agency, I worked as a crisis responder, meaning I took incoming calls for veterans and civilians across the entire globe who are dealing with suicide. Whether it was having thoughts of suicide, whether it was someone who had experienced the loss of a person to suicide, or whether it was someone who was just kind of on the fence and just not sure if they wanted to take their lives. And so during my time taking calls, I was able to talk to a lot of different people. I won't share much of that because of the fact that I will not violate HIPAA. But I do want to talk a little bit about the stigma of suicide. A lot of us look at suicide as if it's something that, or not suicide specifically, but suicidal thoughts, as if it's something that's taboo. And because of that, a lot of people don't feel comfortable sharing when they have thoughts like this with people. I work with people who every day take calls from people who are dealing with thoughts of suicide. And I want to talk about it so that we can really normalize it a little bit more. Not normalizing it in the sense of saying that it's okay to take your life, but normalizing it in the sense to say that a lot of people deal with suicidal thoughts. A lot of people contemplate suicide, and it only takes a small amount of time from when that thought first pops into your head to when someone acts on those thoughts. I've personally dealt with suicidal thoughts before. I dealt with suicidal thoughts from the time I was in middle school. Is the first time that I can vividly recall thinking about ending my life. I went through a lot of experiences in middle school, feeling like the oddball, not really fitting in with the white kids who I was in classes with, and not really being able to relate to some of the black kids that I knew. And so it was just a hard thing for me to fit in. I remember my 8th grade year wearing a belt around my neck. Actually, that was not 8th grade, that was 9th and 10th grade. But 8th grade year, I wore a trench coat to school every day, and you would have thought I was like one of those kids that was going to set off the bomb somewhere because of the fact that I felt so isolated. I remember betraying a friend in the 8th grade, trying to fit in with another friend, and I ended up being the outcast for that entire year. And I felt like an outcast for the rest of my high school years as well, because I wanted to fit in with one crowd and didn't really know that I couldn't really fit in with them because I wasn't like them. And as a result of that, I lost a really close friend of mine that I met in 6th grade. And our relationship was never the same after that. We're Facebook friends to this very day, but we just never had that same bond. And she was someone who was really important to me. And so I dealt with a lot of suicidal thoughts at that time. I remember writing a letter in one of my journals. I wrote poetry a lot when I was a kid, and I remember writing a letter about wanting to end my life and saying what I wanted to be buried in. And I actually still have that journal, which is a little bit scary to know, but it was the first time that I really think I considered and contemplated ending my life. I never acted on those thoughts of ending my life in middle school or in high school. In college, I didn't. I dealt with them on and off, like, why am I doing this? What is this for? But no one knew that I was dealing with that. I didn't talk to anybody about that. I'm well aware of the fact that if I say certain things out of my mouth, that might end up in someone putting me in a hospital. I used to joke all the time when I was a kid in high school and even after college about being sent to the Bradley Center. And what's crazy is that I ended up working for the Bradley Center for about 7 years. And I probably needed to be put in the Bradley Center for 3 of the 7 years that I worked there, because I was a hot mess. Like, I actually remember seeing clients and crying in between clients, because it's just like, people don't realize that as therapists, we go through stuff too. And that's why I want to talk with you guys and share things with you guys, because we're not exempt from that. and we have our own lives. I remember when I was working at the Bradley Center, there were so many people that I worked with who went through divorces and went through the death of loved ones in that particular hospital, and they had to keep coming to work and keep helping other people, all while they were dealing with their own personal traumas. So my heart always goes out to all the healthcare workers, counselors, doctors, just all those people that serve others, and people, sometimes it's a thankless job. But back to what the topic of this video is about, it's really about knowing that anybody can deal with suicidal thoughts. And just because someone is thinking about suicide does not mean that they're going to act on it. But what you can do as a friend or a loved one is you can provide that support. You can make sure that they have the number to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. I'll make sure to tag it in the video, but it's 1-800-273-8255. Making sure that they have that number. If you are a veteran, press 1. But there are people out there who are trained to talk people down from having these particular thoughts. But as a friend, what you can do is you can be there to support that person. But please know that as a friend, it is not your responsibility to stop that person from doing what they're doing. It's your responsibility to listen and take action, but you cannot have the weight of that on you. If you cannot get that person the help they need, please reach out to 1-800-273-8255. Please make sure that you ask for someone to reach out to that person, or assist with getting 911 emergency responders or the PD out there to get that person to their local emergency receiving hospital, because suicide is real, and it is affecting and impacting so many different people. And losing a loved one to suicide, that is a very tragic experience. I've only lost one relative that I know of to this day to suicide, and this would happen when back in 1998. I think I was a high school student or just going into high school at that point, and I ended up losing a relative who committed suicide shortly after losing his mom. He actually committed suicide a month after his mom was buried, and that was a very traumatic loss for my family, and for my friends and the people at my church who knew him. And it is something that I think about all the time. Like, anybody could take their life. I've dealt with family members experiencing suicidal thoughts. I've dealt with friends who have dealt with suicidal thoughts. So it is not something that is so taboo that we don't need to talk about it. We absolutely need to talk about it. Suicide has impacted me personally on so many different levels, and I want you guys to know that you are not alone, and you do not have to feel like it's your job to fix it, because it is not your job. It is your job to reach out and get help for that person if they are unwilling to get the help for themselves. But do not let yourself take on that burden and that responsibility of keeping that person safe. There are a lot of different apps out there that help people who are dealing with suicidal thoughts, helping them create a safety plan. But the main thing is to get them to an emergency receiving facility so that they can be evaluated by a mental health professional, and making sure that they get the help that they need. I'll talk a little bit more about my personal history with that. I went through a really bad relationship. And that's the only time that I've ever came close to attempting suicide. There was another time in my life in 2016 where I was going through a really bad breakup, and I was thinking about it really, really heavy, like super, super heavy. And that morning I remember reaching out to a friend like, hey, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And they gave me the number of their therapist. And even though that appointment was not for 2 weeks, I knew, hey, I'm going to be able to see a therapist in 2 weeks. I can keep myself safe until then. And once I started seeing the therapist, I felt a lot better. So I am a strong advocate for getting help, reaching out to get support. I don't say these things to make you feel bad for me or make you feel any type of way, but just to let you know that you are not alone and your relatives are not alone, because suicidal thoughts is something that could happen to anyone at any time. We are living in a world right now that is so unfamiliar to so many different people. We're living through a pandemic, something that no one probably listening to this video has ever gone through before in their life. This is something that is new and it is foreign. And so please, if you need help, reach out for support. 1-800-273-8255. someone will answer that line. If you are a veteran, press 1 to reach the Veterans Crisis Line. If you are calling from any other state in the United States, it will route you to your local crisis line based on your area code that you're calling from. Please take care of yourselves, love each other, and continue to live long and prosper. Again, I'm Treaty LPC. Thank you for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, and tap that notification bell. I hate that shit, but tap it anyway.
Fall back, forever she will rest in peace. Cease to exist, ooh, I killed him with a kiss. Don't blink or you might miss another body on my list. She hits him with that deadly silence, dropping bodies like the virus. You might think that she's psychotic, or maybe a little violent, but I bet that you won't try me if you ever dare to cross me. I don't play, she don't play. OMG, I think she's lost it. I found it, and I promise you ain't seen the last of me. We making futures history like a plague of misery.